It's a difficult game for the NDC, is it not? Because it's seeking to scrap all sorts of taxes. E-levy is going, covered tax is going. That alone, you're going to lose as much as about 8 billion, cedis in revenue. Betting tax will go, and you're telling us the economy is in intensive, care. How are you going to do this, Dr. Arthur Kennedy? Let's check if you are also as positive like the other, elder statesmen who were part of this process and have been saying this is good, except sometimes we are familiar with this path. Implementation, it's always our problem.
Yes. Happy Independence Day to all Ghanaians. They say that we celebrate our and if we haven't achieved much in life. So we should celebrate Independence Day. But I think it's an interesting conversation. Our problem, Samson, is that we refuse to call things by their proper names. Kofi Bento makes an excellent, impassioned case about whether anything is new and all that, and then he falls into the same trap by saying that the vice president, who was the economic guru for the government that abysmally failed, was a great candidate. I mean, that is part of our refusal to call things by their proper names. I am reminded of the story of a guy who got married, and after some time, nothing was happening, and the elders called him and they said, "Where are the children?" He said, "I'm talking to my wife." And the old man said, "Man, there is a way of producing children. You can produce children by just talking to your wife. There are things you need to do." I think we've heard a lot of these things, and I'm glad that it was brought up.
The vice president didn't call the shots. He was not the president.
Yeah, but he was the vice president who was brought in because he had economic news. The president said, "I'm on board because he's an economic journalist." So at the end of the day, you can't tell us that the economy failed and you knew nothing about it. You were only the aplanke. But let me go on.
But we understand, for example, the vice president was against e-levy, but the government went ahead to implement it. What could he do?
Well, and what could he do? Have you ever heard of Ojinja Odinga, who resigned as vice president of Kenya because he disagreed with the direction of the governance? And to get back on strike, you realize Donald Trump has been in office for less than John Mahama has been in office. But it seems like he's been there. Every day, he's raining actions, good and bad, on the people. Governance is about doing. And my point was that the Senche engagement and the report, I went back and read it. It sounds very, very similar to the National Economic Dialogue. And part of it is that a lot of the players are the same. They are the same people who have been saying the same things. The problem with Ghana is that we don't want to do things. We kind of tinker around the edges of problems. And the spokesperson for the NDC says, "Oh, the details are coming." Yes, but the highlights tell us your priorities.
On this platform, if I may clarify this before I forget, Professor John Gachi is not here speaking for NDC. He was part of the organizers of the forum.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
The organizer of the forum says the details are there, and a lot of these things people are saying are in the details. It's true, but the communique highlights your priorities. So if something is important enough, it will be in your communique. There was nothing about fighting corruption. I think fighting corruption is an indispensable pillar to turning our economy around. So even if you were listing 3 things, it should have been there in blazing headlines. I haven't even talked about the action. I never heard any discussion about the role of the diaspora. For over the last decade, they've been sending every year more money than we get in foreign direct investments. And we didn't discuss the role of the diaspora in our economy. There was nothing on moral enforcement of the country, because most of our problems are moral. The difference between right and wrong, principle, calling things as they are. They are talking about increasing revenue. Every year, Parliament gets people to line up to ask for tax annulment, tax forgiveness. Every year they do that, even while officially we are saying we are not raising enough revenue. How are you going to raise enough revenue when every year you are forgiving taxes? And there are state-owned enterprises. I can tell you, in 2000, one of the first detailed conversations I had with Boache Japons on state-owned enterprises, the World Bank had prepared a report on Ghana's state-owned enterprises with solutions. That was a quarter of a century ago. And we're still talking about them. We need to understand that governance is about doing things. And the good professor talked about, there's going to be another dialogue on education, how many dialogues are we going to have? I am hopeful, but frankly, I am getting less and less optimistic by the day. We need to start doing things. What are we going to do about corruption? Without solving corruption, nothing else will work. What are we going to do to bring the diaspora to the table? If we don't do that, then they will lose interest in our development. And I tell you, from where the diaspora come, there are more people behind them, our children, who will give us 50 and 60 years of commitment going to second and third generations if we do things right. What are we going to do? For example, when was the last time a president fired a cabinet minister for corruption? When was the last time Parliament refused to pass the budget for a ministry because auditing showed that there was malfeasance? Why is it that we talk about state-owned enterprises? And President Mahama, unfortunately, has already set the predicate for the state-owned enterprises continuing to fail, because we have appointed people to them based solely on cronyism without reforming their boards and bringing transparency and other things that will be the foundations of turning them around. And as for privatization of ECG, that people think is a solution, here in North America, most electricity companies are not privatized because most states think that things like electricity and health and other things might be too important to subject to the tender mercies of profiteering or profit and losses. So that is not a panacea to all problems.
So you're seeing the president being slow, compared to, as it is, Donald Trump, and in action almost every day, and like you said, good and bad, because some of the things he's doing, he himself is beginning to reverse some of them because they are biting. Listen to the MPs, just a couple of them, and tell me if the president is not, in fact, signaling correctly, because it does appear there's a groundswell of the society that suggests that the president is doing right.